One of the biggest debates in the smartphone world is whether to buy the latest Samsung flagship or the most recent iPhone flagship. I'm going to compare them on things that you really buy the phones for. And there are 8 such things that matter once you've bought, owned and used a smartphone, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk about, okay? Let's start with design. See, it's clear. Both have similar soft matte texture at the back, respective iconic camera island or islands, and a slippery character, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But in terms of feel, the S23 Ultra definitely has a better grip because of slightly curved edges, whereas the iPhone 14 Pro and the Pro Max, they have slightly sharper edges, and so when you hold it, it's not as much of a complete settling grip. Also, the S23 Ultra has this nearly bezel-free display, which adds to the more immersive experience. The iPhone 14 Pro series, it doesn't look bad, it's just not as bezel-less. I just feel that the iPhone 14 Pro series has a bit of more casual aesthetics, owing to its rounded corners, whereas the S23 Ultra has a more boxy, straight cuts that makes it look a little bit more professional. So yeah, overall, the S23 Ultra definitely looks and feels better in the hand. But what about durability? So the iPhone 14 Pro has ceramic shield for its front and back, a stainless steel frame, and high tolerance for water and dust resistance, all of which is better and stronger than the S23 Ultra. And so while the S23 Ultra is aesthetically better, from a durability standpoint, it's the iPhone 14 Pro series. But do note one thing, if you guys are going to put on a case, then none of this matters. And that's when other things become important. For example, longevity. iPhones tend to remain healthier and more consistent in terms of battery, performance, and software updates. And they also have higher resale value as compared to a Samsung phone. And although Samsung is better than most Android manufacturers out there in terms of software updates and optimization, it's still not quite as good as Apple. Now, a big part of owning a smartphone is about capturing moments. And this blanket notion that iPhones take the best photos and videos may not be true this time. So let's directly jump into photo samples. And here are very average photos I took randomly as I walked around using both the phones. No filters applied, no touches, I just slapped them on here. All I can tell you is that the S23 Ultra generally takes better looking photos. They're more shareable, more social media worthy, more likely to be shared on messengers without any form of editing required, straight off the bat, ready to go. Though sometimes the iPhone 14 Pro does manage to take better photos than the S23 Ultra, but as I said, generally, on an average, if you took like 100 photos and then you compared them, majority of the photos are just better taken by the S23 Ultra. And it's alright if you don't want to believe me, or if you prefer more natural looking photos. What I'm going to do is leave a link in the description. You can download all of these photos, place them side by side and compare it for yourself and just see which one you like better. Now, when it comes to low light or nighttime photos, the S23 Ultra is definitely a bit ahead of the iPhone 14 Pro series. So the S23 Ultra generally captures colors more accurately in low light. It also uses AI in a better way to reduce noise, and it also handles areas with high intensity of light better than the iPhone 14 Pro series. But I have to agree that the iPhone 14 Pro series, it does take better daylight videos as compared to the S23 Ultra. I mean, the S23 Ultra day videos are good, but when you compare them to the iPhone 14 Pro series, it does look overly processed and sometimes even slightly more blue. iPhones, they just take fabulous daytime videos and it is very obvious. But when it comes to low light videos, the S23 Ultra, it leaves the iPhone 14 Pro series to dust. The low light footage is so much cleaner, more stable, jitter-free, and the way it handles bright light in dim conditions is absolutely amazing on the S23 Ultra. The iPhone, it really struggles to get it right. Obviously, I haven't forgotten the selfies, and again, I do feel that the S23 Ultra takes not only more detailed shots, but it even captures the skin tone and texture a bit better. Now, on top of all of this, the S23 Ultra gives you a 200 megapixel camera, which takes crazy detailed photos, which you can then zoom into or crop into without losing any details. And the iPhone 14 Pro series is nowhere close to that. So overall, except for the regular daylight videos that the iPhone 14 Pro series does take better, I do believe that the S23 Ultra has better overall camera and video capabilities. And as I said earlier guys, there's going to be a link in the description and you can download all of these photos and video samples and check the quality for yourself. Alright, now let's get a little deeper. And if you're someone who's trying to buy a phone for content creation, then you're going to need a little different perspective, especially coming from a content creator. Now I understand that the iPhone 14 Pro series takes better daylight videos, but is that enough for content creation as a process? What about file management and file transfers? I would personally stick with the S23 Ultra because it's so much easier to transfer files from the S23 Ultra to a Windows or a MacBook. But then transferring files from an iPhone to a Windows laptop is a complete mess. I mean, you can even connect an external drive or a flash drive directly to your S23 Ultra and take a backup of your files on the go. That's the level of flexibility you get with the S23 Ultra. Then there's also a manual mode for shooting videos in the S23 Ultra that lets you control white balance, ISO, focus, and even gives you audio and histogram levels right in the camera app. You don't need any third-party app, you don't have to spend any money. It's all built right into the default camera app. What's crazy is that these Pro controls are even in the front camera now that can shoot in 4K quality, but with these manual controls that the iPhones don't have. And then even after you've edited a video on the two phones, for the exact same project or same edit with the exact same export settings, the S23 Ultra exports your video slightly faster than the iPhone 14 Pro. And then you also get the option to shoot in 8K on the S23 Ultra. And that gives you more flexibility while editing a 4K video. It lets you zoom in and out without losing any details. I mean, the point that I'm trying to make is that content creation capabilities, they extend far beyond just being able to take good daylight videos. And I think that's where the S23 Ultra really outperforms the iPhone 14 Pro series. Okay, now let's talk about general everyday use. So look, they both have gorgeous OLED displays that are super crisp, color accurate, and they support HDR. Watching movies, playing games, or even while using outdoors, it's such a visual treat. Even while gaming, both phones offer near equal performance, smooth, flawless, uninterrupted gaming experience. And no, neither of the devices get hot. But let me tell you where things start to get a little different. See, up to a basic point, both phones are equally productive. But if you want to go above and beyond, that's where the S23 Ultra can really shine. For example, the inbuilt S Pen lets you take notes, annotate screenshots, just to add more efficiency to your work process. With Samsung DeX, your phone converts itself into a PC-like experience, giving you the flexibility to work more efficiently. File management is a lot superior, and even file search is so much more powerful. You can even hook up cloud services and even access FTP servers and network drives. Screen recording capabilities allow you to pause and resume recording, add your own face in the recording, and even annotate. With multi-window functionalities, you could be watching a video or a tutorial and taking down notes, or even be able to select files or photos and drag them onto a conversation. And with functionalities like Link to Windows, you could hook it up to any Windows PC and respond to notifications, transfer files, drag and drop photos into documents, make and receive phone calls, and even enable universal copy and paste. I mean, this is not even a fair comparison. The S23 Ultra can just get more done. And the iPhone, or rather the iOS, is nowhere close to that. You will have to get yourself the iPad with the pencil and a MacBook to get all of that done. Okay, now let's talk about reliability and security. And reliability is basically your user experience with the OS. And both the phones are really well optimized. But on the other angle, which is OS updates, Apple is just better. So Apple gives you about 5 to 7 years of OS updates to your device as compared to 4 years on Samsung. The other thing is Apple pushes all its updates to all of its devices at the same time. Samsung, on the other hand, it will delay the OS update to your device as it gets older. And lastly, security. See, it's a well-known fact that iPhones are more secure in terms of app permissions, marketplace policies, and background usage. Even Face ID on the iPhones are a lot more secure than Face Unlock on, let's say, Android phones like the S23 Ultra. But to be very honest, I do prefer the fingerprint unlocking, which is faster and more flexible. And just FYI, I'm not saying that the S23 Ultra is not secure. It's plenty secure and works for everyone. It's just that it's not as tight as the iPhone's security systems. Fun fact though, if someone steals your iPhone, they can immediately turn it off without having to know the unlock code to your phone. They can't do that on Samsung phones because it's going to ask for the unlock code. And so if you think about it, it's going to be a lot easier to locate a stolen Samsung phone than it would be to locate a stolen iPhone. Okay, now let's talk about battery. And the battery performance on both the phones is really good. So both phones can give you anywhere between 7 to 9 hours of screen on time in a single charge. Although I do have to admit that across the internet, consistently the iPhone 14 Pro Max has beaten the Galaxy S23 Ultra in terms of battery life. I don't have an iPhone 14 Pro Max to really test that out, but I'm going to go with the other experts. Though I would like to point out that the S23 Ultra is capable of charging other devices wirelessly, like other phones and other wearable devices. It can even reverse charge devices with a wire. The iPhone 14 series has no trick like that up its sleeve. Okay, now let's discuss which of these phones have better pricing and more value for money. If you consider US prices, they actually cost the same. But except for in the US, with various discounts and cashbacks, the S23 Ultra 256GB sells for less when compared to a 256GB iPhone 14 Pro Max. And so at first or upfront, it may look like the S23 Ultra has better pricing or offers more value. But because Apple offers more years of OS upgrade and iPhones have higher resale value, at the end of it, long term, it is actually the iPhones that offer better value for money. Alright, so it looks like we have a tie. But does that mean that you can then pick any phone and that it'll work for you? Actually, what breaks the tie is your personal preference. For example, for me, content creation, camera capabilities, and productivity is a lot more important. And so in my head, a Samsung S23 Ultra will score more than the iPhone. But if for you, let's say security, device longevity, OS upgrades, value for money are more important, then in your head, the iPhone should score higher than the S23 Ultra. And that should help you decide between the two phones. Another thing to keep in mind, and could be a decision maker, is that if you're already in the Apple ecosystem, it may not be worth it for you to switch over to Android. On the flip side, if you're within the Android ecosystem, or if you're used to the flexibility and functionalities and features you get in the Android world, it may not be worth it for you to switch over to iPhone because you're not gonna get that. You know guys, there's this general belief that whenever iPhones, even with limited features that it has, it does them much better than any other smartphone player in the market. But this time around, with the S23 Ultra, not only has Samsung again been full of features, but it's done them better than the iPhone 14 Pro series. And there's this reality shift now, which I think Apple needs to think about. And with the iPhone 15 Pro series, they would really need to level up their game this time to match up to S23 Ultra. So that's it guys, two of the best phones in the market, separated by ecosystem, usability, and mindset. Alright, enough from me guys. Questions, comments, opinion, hate, put all of them down in the comment section. That's where we can have the most fun. I'll see you guys in the next one.